Have you ever stopped to think about how a company takes a million tiny little sales and somehow turns them into one giant, game-changing strategy? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down today. We're looking at the hidden information systems that power pretty much every modern business.
It seems like a massive leap, right? I mean, how on earth does one customer buying one thing in one little shop, how does that ripple all the way up to a huge decision made in a boardroom on the other side of the world? That's the journey we're going to follow. We're going to look at the different systems that make it all possible.
Okay, so to really get this, we have to start at the very beginning. We need to understand the fundamental difference between just raw data and a truly powerful decision. This pyramid, this is the key to, well, everything. At the very bottom, you've got raw data. We're talking millions of individual facts, like sales receipts. On their own, they're basically just noise. But as we start climbing, different systems add structure and context. They turn that data into useful information. Then that information becomes knowledge until you reach the very top, a smart, informed decision. The systems we're about to dive into are the engines that power that climb. So let's start where it all begins. At the bottom of that pyramid, we're going down into the engine room of the company, the place where every single transaction gets captured. This is the Transaction Processing System, or TPS for short. Now, its job sounds simple, but trust me, it is massive. Its goal is to record everything, every sale, every item returned, every single hour an employee works. This is the bedrock, the system that scoops up all that raw data we saw at the bottom of our pyramid. So who's down here in the engine room? It's the operational staff, the people on the front lines. They're the ones scanning items at the checkout and updating the inventory in the back. The goal here isn't some complex, deep analysis. No, it's all about two things: speed and accuracy. This system has to be the single source of truth for the entire company. All right, let's move up to the next level and see how this all builds. We're climbing out of the engine room and up into the control tower, where managers start to make sense of all that data. Welcome to the Decision Support System, or DSS. Its whole purpose is to help middle managers tackle more complex questions. It takes that mountain of data from the TPS and gives them the tools to spot patterns and solve problems that aren't just part of the daily routine. This is where your middle managers and business analysts really shine. They use the DSS to ask things like, what were our sales trends last quarter? Or, and this is the really cool part, to run what-if scenarios. You know, what happens to our profit if we raise the price by 5%? This is all about turning that raw information into real, actionable insight. Okay, time to ascend to the highest level of the organization, up to what I like to call the captain's bridge, where the view is strategic and the thinking is all about the long term. And here on the bridge, we find the Executive Information System, the EIS. This system is not for deep dive analysis. It's designed for clarity and for vision. Its whole job is to distill massive amounts of information from both inside and outside the company into simple, easy-to-read visual dashboards for the C-suite. The top executives use an EIS to get a quick pulse on the business. They're glancing at key performance metrics, they're checking in on what competitors are doing, and they're scanning the horizon for big threats and new opportunities. This is where those huge, high-stakes decisions about the company's future are actually born. And here's how it all locks together so beautifully. The operational level, at the bottom, collects all the data with the TPS. That data then flows up to the tactical level, where managers use a DSS to analyze it. And finally, all of that analysis is summarized and flows to the very top, to the strategic level, where executives use an EIS to steer the whole ship. See, each level perfectly feeds the next. So, to wrap this whole structure up, let's be crystal clear about something. This isn't about one system being better than any other. Not at all. It's about having the right tool for the right job at the right level. This table really puts it all side by side perfectly. Your TPS is all about processing data for routine, structured decisions. Then the DSS shifts the focus to analyzing data for those tactical, semi-structured decisions. And finally, the EIS is all about monitoring everything to support those big, unstructured strategic decisions at the very top. When you boil it all down, the goal of this entire architecture, this whole pyramid we've been talking about, comes down to this one simple but incredibly powerful idea: getting the right information to the right person at the right time. It empowers everyone, from the cashier on the floor to the CEO in the boardroom, to make the absolute smartest decision they can. And that brings us to one last thought to leave you with. You know, these systems have been the backbone of business for decades.
But as artificial intelligence gets more and more powerful, you have to wonder, how are these lines going to blur? Could an AI-driven system one day handle all three levels, from transaction all the way up to strategy, in one single, seamless process? Now that's a question that is probably going to define the next generation of business.